Hello and welcome to the Purple Elephant YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about performance reviews. I have been getting tons of emails from clients about performance reviews, help with them, why employees are getting frustrated with them. And so I thought it would be really great to answer a lot of the questions that I've been getting in my emails. So I want to ask you a question. When was the last time an employee said to you, I can't wait for my performance review? They probably have never said that. And the reason why is because for most employees, performance reviews feel extremely stressful and they're frustrating and they're completely disconnected from the actual work that the employee is doing. And for managers, performance reviews is often something that managers are rushing through because either they're really uncomfortable with giving them, or because they're behind schedule, or because they're just unsure of what to say. And so the truth is that people don't hate performance reviews. They hate the bad performance review systems. And today I am going to explain the 6 reasons why performance reviews fail and what those failures are really telling us about organizational risk. So I'm Janora, and I am the organizational doctor and founder of the Self-Care Network LLC. And I help organizations identify the people risks that are hiding beneath everyday workplace challenges. And those people risks are what I call naming the purple elephants. And so one of the biggest work complaints that I hear is about performance reviews. And so let's talk about why everyone seems to hate them. Well, reason number one, performance reviews are often a surprise. And the purpose of a performance review should never be to introduce new information to a struggling employee. Yet somehow employees sit down and they're hearing things that they haven't heard from the entire year. They're hearing things like you're struggling with communication, your performance has been inconsistent, there are concerns about your leadership, and they're hearing it for the very first time. So if an employee is shocked during a review, that isn't an employee problem, that's a management problem, because performance reviews should summarize conversations that have already happened throughout the year. Nothing in the performance review should be a plot twist. Reason number 2, managers avoid honest feedback. So let's be honest, many managers, they hate difficult conversations. They worry about hurting someone's feelings. They want to be liked. They don't want conflict. So instead of addressing issues when they happen, they wait and they wait and they wait. And then 6 months later, they try to cram all of these concerns into a single performance review. Now the employee feels blindsided. The manager is uncomfortable and the review is becoming emotionally charged. So it's not necessarily because the feedback is wrong, but it's because the feedback came way too late. Number 3, everybody's getting the same rating. So have you ever worked somewhere where the high performer and the average performer and the struggling employee are all receiving nearly identical rating? Employees notice that. And when they do, they stop taking the process seriously. Because if exceptional effort is receiving the same recognition as minimal effort, the message is becoming very clear that performance doesn't matter. And once employees believe that performance doesn't matter, accountability starts disappearing throughout the organization. And reason number 4, problems aren't addressed in real time. So imagine you're driving your car for an entire year. And then at the end of the year, someone tells you, oh, by the way, you've been drifting into the wrong lane since February. That sounds ridiculous, right? Yet that's exactly how many organizations handle performance. Issues aren't addressed when they occur. When coaching is not happening consistently, expectations aren't being reinforced, managers are staying silent, and then everything is showing up during review season. And real accountability happens in real time. It cannot happen once a year. Reason number 5, employees are not trusting the process. And this one is huge. Employees are often asking themselves, how was this rating determined? What criteria was used? Why did that person receive a higher score? Who made this decision? What performance system lacks transparency? And 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 so the issue is once employees lose trust in that process, and once they say, okay, there's no transparency around this, trust starts to disappear. And they stop seeing reviews as developmental tools and they start seeing them as political exercises. And that's a really dangerous place for an organization to be. And then reason number six, the review becomes paperwork instead of accountability. So this is probably the biggest problem that I see across the board with organizations. Many organizations are treating performance reviews as an administrative task. It's a form that gets completed. It's a box that gets checked. It's a document that's getting filed away. Nothing is changing. There's no coaching. There's no development plan. There's no follow up. There's no accountability. And this review exists because the organization says it has to exist, not because anyone believes that it's creating improvement. And so at that point, it's not a performance management system. It's just paperwork. And if you think that this only happens in theory, let me tell you about a conversation I had with the leadership team. So we were discussing performance concerns across the organization. One by one, leaders started describing employees who weren't meeting expectations. And they were saying things like this person, they struggle with communication, or this employee isn't taking initiative, or we've had concerns about this employee's performance for months. And then I listened and I asked a simple question. Have these concerns been communicated directly to the employee? And the room got quiet. And some leaders said, well, not exactly. And others said, well, we hinted at it. And a few assumed that the employee already knew. But nobody actually had the conversation. And everyone expected the performance review to somehow fix the problem. And then that's when it hit me. The performance review wasn't the issue. The issue was that accountability had been delayed for months. The review had become the first real conversation instead of the summary of many conversations. And the employee wasn't sitting there because feedback had been given and then they just chose to ignore it. The employee was sitting there because leadership had avoided the conversation altogether. And I see this happen all the time. Organizations spend enormous amounts of energy redesigning performance review forms, and they change rating scales and they update templates and they create new evaluation systems. But the real problem usually isn't the form. The real problem is that accountability has been postponed until review season. So, what can you do? Well, here's a couple of things that I suggest. Number one, I think it's really important to develop a coaching system along with the performance review. So, a lot of times, performance reviews are given um, as a way to be the first documentation of somebody doing something wrong. And that should not happen, right? You should be having supervisor meetings, one to one support meetings, whatever your organization calls it, throughout the entire year. Every organization's time frame is different. I worked for an organization that did supervisor meetings once a week. I worked with ones that did it bi-weekly. I worked with ones that did it monthly. It really doesn't matter when you have your supervisor meetings. They should be consistent. So whether you're doing them once a month, once a week, bi-weekly, monthly, however, they should be consistent. And these supervisor meetings should be documented. So you should have a template across the board in the organization that every supervisor is using with their employees. And they should be documenting what needs to go in there. They need to know concerns, goals, barriers, issues, problems, concerns, all of it. And then here's the thing that people don't do. So your organization may be doing all of that, but then there's one thing that they miss. There's no signature. And that's really important. When you are having these conversations, whether it's positive conversations with the employee about things they're doing good or negative conversations about things that they're not doing right, it needs to be signed. You should be signing it and dating it. The employee should be signing it and dating it. That way, everybody is on the same page and nobody can come back around and say, well, I was never told. That way, when you do the performance reviews, you are able to collectively gather all the supervisor documents from all the meetings that you've had over the course of that year and use those documents to support writing your performance review plan. And then when you do that, the performance review plan really should have some sort of coaching system. And that coaching system is going to look different for every organization across the board. Some organizations have the capacity to have an internal coaching system, and some organizations don't, and they need external help. Neither is wrong. And the coaching is going to look very different for each employee. So coaching could be that you are getting an outside consultant to work with this person for 3, 6, 9, 12 months, however long to do executive leadership coaching, right? Maybe this is an employee that is struggling with being able to supervise their teams. Maybe they're having a problem really showing up as a supervisor and as a leader. Coaching can also look like a couple of trainings, right? So those trainings can also maybe be provided in house, or you can send them and outsource trainings that they may need or different workshops. Really, depending on what the issue is, what the employee is going to determine what your coaching plan is. But if you are a supervisor right now and you are doing performance reviews and you have an employee who isn't doing so well and you do not have a coaching plan ready in place with them, that is not good. And it may also be that sometimes the coaching plan is something that's developed with the employee as well, the employee might say, well, I feel like I am definitely really struggling in this, and this is the type of trainings, workshops, coaching help that I would like to make sure that I succeed. Um, Also, too, another issue is that there's a lot of biases around performance reviews. And so a lot of employees feel that performance reviews are that document that's used to get them out of the organization. And we really, it's your responsibility as CEO, executive director, senior leader, whatever your title is, to help alleviate those biases. Because a performance review system shouldn't be this big, scary thing where the employee feels like, oh my God, I'm going to be let go, I'm going to be fired. It really should be used as a supportive tool to help get them to where they need to get. Now, yes, obviously, sometimes you can provide all the help in the world to an employee and it's just not working out. You gotta let them go. That is completely understandable. But what is happening is that a lot of organizations, unfortunately, are letting employees go before they're even putting supports into place, right? So they didn't have those one-to-one supervisor meetings that they needed to have, or they did, but they didn't document them, or they didn't put any coaching supports in place, and coaching supports have to be measurable as well, right? Because you can't you have to make sure that whatever the goal is, and again, let's bring it back to the most easiest one. If you have a supervisor who just isn't being a really good supervisor with their team, you've got to have actionable support steps that they can actually meet, right? And have them work towards something and have them work towards an actionable goal that they can accomplish, or maybe they don't accomplish it, right? And if they do accomplish it, okay, great. You no longer have the problem. You invested in coaching, you invested in supports, you're doing great. Sometimes you invest in coaching, you invest in support, and it still just doesn't click. And then, oh well. But it is important for you as a senior leader to have accountability. Just like you want your employees to have accountability, you need to have accountability as well. And the way to have that accountability is making sure that you are using that performance review system as a way to support the employee, as a way to implement a coaching system, to make sure that you can help them get out of whatever barriers they are that they might have. And I will say this, if you do have to say bye bye to an employee, it makes it a lot easier when you have all of this documentation, when you can actually show that you had supervisor meetings that were signed, when you had a performance review that had a coaching plan attached to it. It makes it a lot easier. If you don't have all of that stuff, it makes HR's job really hard to say goodbye to an employee without that documentation. So it's really important. And, here's the purple elephant that nobody wants to talk about. Performance reviews rarely fell because of the form. They fell because of what happens the other 364 days of the year. If managers aren't having conversations, if expectations aren't clear, if accountability isn't happening, if trust doesn't exist, no performance review process is going to fix that. The review simply exposes problems that already existed. And so that's why I categorize this as an accountability risk. Because when organizations avoid feedback and delay difficult conversations and they fail to address performance in real time, accountability becomes an annual event instead of a daily practice. And then eventually that risk just spreads into culture and retention and engagement and performance. So, if your organization is struggling with performance reviews, the real question that you should be asking yourself isn't how do we improve the review form? The real question is what accountability problems is the review process exposing? And that's exactly what we uncover through the Purple Elephant People Risk Operating System, because every frustrating performance review is usually a symptom of a bigger people risk that's hiding underneath the surface. And so until you identify the purple elephant in the room, the paperwork alone won't solve the problem. So if you found this helpful, subscribe, share this video, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And I want to know, what's the worst performance review that you've ever experienced? And if you need to get in contact with me, my email is janora at the selfcarenetwork.org, or you can go on my website, www.theselfcarenetwork.org. Or if you need to, this is a lot to remember. All of that information is in the bio, in my bio on my YouTube channel. So I will see everyone in the next video. And I just want you to remember, performance reviews don't have to be as scary as they seem. They actually can be fun if you do them the right way.